The drum should not have been beating, not at this hour, not with no hands upon it, not with a rhythm no elder in Kirinda had ever taught. Yet there it was, low, deep, wrong, rolling out from the baobab at the village heart like a heartbeat that belonged to nothing living. Tondo froze mid-step, one sandal hovering above the dust. The goats he'd been driving scattered. He didn't chase them. His eyes stayed locked on the great talking drum that had not been touched since his grandfather's boyhood, the drum the elders called sacred, sleeping, and forbidden. It was beating now, and no one stood beside it. Behind him, a woman screamed his sister's name. If this is your first time gathered around this fire, welcome. Tap subscribe so the next telling finds you. Now back to Kirinda, 3 days before any of this seemed possible. Kirinda sat in green hills where the Nandi River bent like an elbow, and its fields never failed, even in years when neighboring villages went hungry. The elders said the land remembered a promise, a bond between the first ancestors and the spirits of the Mother Grove at the forest's edge. The rule was simple and ancient. No one enters the grove. Not hunters, not children, not even the chief. Tondo was 16, tall, restless, the son of Baraka, the village's finest blacksmith. His mother had died 3 harvests ago, and grief had hardened into something reckless in him. His sister Amara, 12, quiet and watchful, had noticed the mud on his ankles that only came from one place and said nothing. Not yet. He had first found the grove's edge by accident, chasing a runaway goat. He'd stood at the tree line and felt something he had no word for. Not fear, but a pull, as if the forest had noticed him noticing it. He went back 4 days later, not for the goat, but because the pull hadn't faded. "You've been near the old grove," Amara said one evening, not looking up from the fufu she was pounding. "Not a question." "Papa says the grove takes things," she added. "He says it like a man afraid, not like a man telling stories." "Papa's afraid of everything since Mama died," Tondo snapped, and watched the words land in his sister's chest like a stone. "I'm sorry," he said, softer. But he didn't promise to stay away. That night, old Mama Nandi, the village's storyteller, gathered the young people at the fire and told a story no one wanted to hear, of a boy who believed the old laws weren't made for him. "The grove does not punish curiosity," she said, staring into the flames. "It punishes disregard." For one heartbeat, her eyes seemed to settle on Tando. 2 nights later, the moon dimmed with no cloud in the sky, every dog in the village howling at once. By morning, 3 goats were found dead in their pens. No wound, no illness, eyes open toward the grove. The elders gathered at dawn. Old Osei, whose clouded eyes seemed to see more than most men's too, said flatly, "Someone has disturbed the grove. The boundary has been crossed." His gaze swept the crowd and paused just briefly on Tando. Amara found her brother by the river that afternoon. "You have to tell them." "Tell them what? That I walked near some trees?" "There's grove moss between your toes. You've been inside." Her voice shook. "Goats are dead. The sky went dark, and you still won't say anything? They'll say I brought a curse on the whole village," Tondo said, and walked away before she could answer. That night, unable to sleep, Tondo returned to the grove, not because the pull had come back, but because some wounded part of him needed to prove nothing was wrong. This time, the forest opened. Between 2 ancient trunks where there had only ever been undergrowth, a narrow moss-lined path now lay, lit by a bluish glow from nowhere, and from somewhere along it, a voice called his name. His mother's voice. He walked in before his mind had finished deciding anything, and behind him, unseen, the sacred drum gave a single unbidden thud. The path led him through trees grown impossibly tall, their bark carved with shifting symbols, until it opened into a clearing dominated by a vast gray tree hung with hundreds of small clay bells, all utterly still. Beneath it sat a woman who was not his mother. The same cheekbones, the same tired kindness, but skin that held moonlight and eyes of depthless silver. "You are not her," Tando said. "No," she agreed. "But I wore her voice because grief opens doors nothing else can. Your people call me the keeper." "What do you want from me?" "The question," she said, "is what your village took from me, and how long it believed it could keep taking without paying what was owed." 6 generations ago, she told him, Kirinda's ancestors had come to this land dying, the soil barren, and had begged the grove for help. She had bound the land, called the rains, made the soil hold life. In exchange for one thing, once each generation, when the sacred drum called, someone from the village would return to the grove and speak a single honest truth, freely given. For 5 generations the bond held. Then pride set in. The drum fell silent. The grove was declared forbidden, not from respect, the keeper said, but from fear of what remembering would cost. The goats, the darkened moon, that was you, Tando said. That was the bond straining, she answered. Patience is not the same as forgiveness. She could not accept one boy's guilt to erase a whole village's debt, but his uninvited crossing was itself a kind of truth-telling. She offered him a bargain. In 3 nights, on the night the moon vanished completely, the bond would break beyond repair, unless someone the village trusted returned each remaining night and gave her an honest truth. Not a confession softened for comfort, but something that cost to say aloud. It has to be an elder, Tando said. They will not come, the keeper said. Men who have practiced not saying for 60 years do not remember how to say. It is the young who still remember how to bleed honestly. That is why I called you, and not your father. Before releasing him, she caught his wrist. One more thing. You are not the first of your family to walk this path. Your mother came here herself 3 years ago, the season she died. She sought no bond, only mercy, for your sister lay fevered and dying. I healed her freely and gave your mother a warning in return, one she chose never to repeat. Ask yourself, on the walk home, why a woman who feared nothing chose silence over telling her own children what she learned beneath this tree. The bells above them gave one soft, sorrowful chime. Do not tell your sister where you have been. Not yet. Tando stumbled home before dawn, hollowed out, and did not sleep. He didn't notice that Amara, awake across the room, had heard him leave and return smelling of moss and something colder than their village, and had already decided that if her brother wouldn't tell her the truth, she would go and find it herself. The next day passed in a fog. At the forge, his father, Baraka, set down his hammer and studied him. Something is wrong with you. Tando lied, just missing Mama, which was, at least, not entirely false. Baraka's rare hand on his shoulder nearly undid him. That evening he found his friend Kito hiding near the elders' gathering, straining to hear Osei and Chief Danladi discuss the drum striking itself with no hand near it. Exhausted and frightened, Tando finally told Kito everything, the grove, the keeper, the 3 nights. Tell the elders, Kito said. They'll say I'm cursed. I have to do this alone. Just cover for me if my father asks. That night, Amara followed her brother to the tree line and watched the glowing path open for him, but not for her. The moment her foot crossed the boundary, every insect sound stopped, and from the shadows a massive 4-legged shape with 2 wide silver eyes rose to block her way, a guardian of the threshold. Little truth-bearer's blood, it said. You were not called. Amara, trembling, did not run. My name is Amara, daughter of Baraka, daughter of Nia. I came because my brother has been disappearing for 3 nights, and no one tells me the truth anymore. And I am tired of being expected to be brave without being told why. The growl stopped. The creature, a guardian, not the keeper herself, studied her. You speak your fear aloud rather than swallow it. Perhaps you are not so unlike your mother. It could not give her the truth she sought, but it would not stop her from walking the path her brother had already taken. Deep in the clearing, Tando knelt before the keeper, wrestling with what truth to give. A truth given because it is useful is not the same as one given because it is honest, she told him. Finally it came, raw and unrehearsed. I am angry at my mother. I have never told anyone. I love her still, but some nights I am furious that she left me with a father who can't speak to his own son, and a sister who needed a mother and got only me. I've hated myself for feeling it. The bells rang once, low and approving. That is a truth, the keeper said. The bond accepts it. At that moment Amara arrived, led by the guardian. The keeper studied them both and decided the truth about their mother's final season was not one to be given, but perhaps not one meant for only one of them either. She told them, 3 years ago their mother had come not seeking secrets, but desperate to save her dying daughter. The keeper had healed Amara's fever that night, not the healer's herbs, as the village believed, in exchange for a single truth their mother gave and never repeated. She confessed she feared she did not love her children equally, and the guilt of that fear was eating her alive. Which one was she closer to? Amara whispered. That is not mine to give you, the keeper said gently. But know this, a mother who did not love her children equally could never have felt guilty enough to nearly break herself over it. The guilt itself is the proof of how hard she fought to love you both. Brother and sister wept together for the first time in 3 years. Before they left, the keeper warned. One truth remained, the heaviest of the three, and it would cost more than either had yet paid. She added one more thing. Tando should look carefully at his father's face and ask why Ose had visited the grove the very night the drum first struck itself. By morning, Ose found Tando at the river and, without preamble, confessed. 60 years ago, he had been the boy chosen to renew the bond. He had stood at the tree line as Tando once had, and been afraid, and turned back. His own father lied to the council to spare him shame, and the council, rather than admit a boy's fear had broken something sacred, simply forbade the grove entirely. I have carried that lie for 60 years, Ose said. The forbidding was never wisdom. It was only my cowardice, dressed in older clothes. Before Tando could absorb this, panic broke out in the village center. Fields withered overnight, the river's flow thinning unnaturally. The crowd, frightened, turned on Tando the moment Mama Chiku accused him aloud. His father Baraka, ashen, demanded the truth. I have been going to the grove, Tando admitted before the whole village, but I did not bring this curse. I uncovered one that has been breaking for 60 years. Ose stepped forward and confirmed it all, his own confession finally spoken in daylight, and the crowd's fury cracked into uncertain silence. Chief Danladi asked what must be done. One truth remained, Tando said, and it had to be spoken that very night before the dark moon rose fully. Baraka, shaking with a grief 3 years buried, insisted on going with his son. I will not fail you again by letting you walk into that forest alone. Amara took her brother's hand. Whatever is asked of our family tonight, I won't be left behind wondering. Ose pulled them aside before they left. There is one more thing. The final truth cannot be spoken by one person. It must be shared, admitted by more than one voice together, something none of you could confess standing alone. The third night. The path opened wider for all three of them at once. Baraka's trembling hands gripped both his children's shoulders as they walked beneath trees that pulsed faintly, restless, as the sliver of moon above the canopy visibly began to thin. The keeper met them beneath the great gray tree. 3 have come, where 2 truths were given by one, she said. Your ancestors sent single messengers and called it sufficient. You have brought your whole broken house instead. The moon shrank faster than she'd promised. Speak your shared truth now, or this bargain ends unfulfilled. We haven't even talked about Mama honestly since we buried her, Amara said, frightened. That, the keeper said, is precisely the truth waiting to be spoken. It was Baraka who broke first. I have been so afraid that if I let myself grieve completely, I would break so thoroughly I'd have nothing left to give you. I told myself silence was strength. It was cowardice. A bell chimed above them. I've been angry at her, Tando said again, this time in front of the 2 people who mattered most, and ashamed of the anger, so I never told you I needed you both these 3 years. I've been so lonely, Amara said, tears finally unhidden. Both of you disappeared into your own grief and left me to be strong alone. I'm still not fine. Every bell in the great tree rang at once, not sorrow now, but release. The ground trembled, the last sliver of moon vanished, and golden light bloomed up through the tree's roots. The bond is mended, the keeper said, not because you saved your village, because you finally let yourselves be saved. But the ground shook again, harder, and a low groan rose from the earth. The keeper's ancient face showed fear for the first time. That is not part of the bond. Every broken bond leaves a shadow when it has festered 60 years. Healing the wound does not erase what fed on it in the dark. A vast, smoke-like, man-shaped thing emerged from the trees, built, the keeper said, from an entire village's 60 years of swallowed silence. It cannot be fought. It can only be named and released by more voices than yours alone. Baraka moved to shield his children with his body, but Tando caught his sleeve. She said it can't be fought, only named. Together they spoke into it. Tando named the fear and cowardice going back to his grandfather's grandfather. Amara named their mother's guilt and her own hidden loneliness. Baraka confessed, voice breaking wide open, 3 years of silence born from terror of failing the way he believed he'd failed his wife. The shadow shuddered, thinned, and began to unravel like morning mist. One truth remains, the keeper warned. The village's truth. This will not fully release unless Kirinda itself stops believing that forbidding is the same as wisdom. Then we tell them, Tando said, everything. No more comfortable half-stories. Truths once spoken to a whole village cannot be gathered back into silence, the keeper said. Some will resent you. I'd rather be resented for something true than loved for something false, Tando answered. The shadow dissolved entirely into the golden light, and the clearing rang with one final pure chime. You have done in 3 nights what 60 years of forbidding could not, the keeper said. Go home, family of Kirinda. Tell your people everything without the edges sanded away. And Tando, tell them this too, for it is the truest thing I know across more lifetimes than your people have words to count. A silence kept out of love is still a silence, and silence, however well-intentioned, is a debt that always eventually comes due. Dawn found the whole village waiting beneath the baobab. You are unharmed, Chief Danladi said. We are, Baraka answered, steady in a way 3 years of silence had never allowed. And the bond is mended. But that is not the only thing we came back to tell you. Together, finishing each other's sentences, they told it all. The keeper, the ancient promise, Ose's 60-year confession, which the old man repeated himself, weeping openly at the crowd's edge, the shadow built of buried grief, and how it had only released its grip when named honestly and together. Not everyone received it easily. Some elders muttered about disrespectful children, but more villagers than not wept beneath that tree, for their own buried griefs, their own quiet, unspoken houses. We forbade the grove because it was easier than admitting our shame, Ose told them. The truth we fear speaking is rarely as dangerous as the silence we build to avoid it. 3 mornings later, the withered millet fields showed the first tender green shoots. The river's flow returned to its old, steady pace. In Baraka's compound, something had shifted for good. The blacksmith began speaking with his children in the evenings, not easily, but honestly. Amara grew steadier by the week, no longer folding her feelings away to spare others, sitting now beside Mama Nandi at the fires and asking the questions other children were too polite to raise. And Tando learned that his anger at his mother hadn't vanished. Grief rarely does, simply because it's spoken. But he no longer had to hide it like a stone in a clenched fist. He could hold it open-handed now, the way his father had once told him grief must eventually be carried. Many months later at the harvest festival, with the drums beating freely beneath the baobab in celebration rather than warning, old Mama Nandi gathered the village's children around the fire and told them a new story of a boy who ignored the elders, a father who learned to break in front of the people he loved, and a sister who refused to be left behind in her family's grief. The elders are not always right simply because they are old, she said, but neither are the young always wise simply because they are brave enough to break a rule. Wisdom is not obedience, children, and it is not rebellion either. Wisdom is honesty, spoken at the moment it is needed most, however much it costs the one who finally speaks it. She let the fire crackle a moment before giving them the words that would in time be carried far beyond Kirinda's hills, to other fires, other villages, and one day, though she would never know it, to listeners across oceans she had never imagined. Remember this, and carry it always. A silence kept out of love is still a silence, and the debts we refuse to speak do not disappear. They only wait patiently for someone brave enough to finally tell the truth.